All right, welcome to part two of today's episode of Social Distillation. What are we going to get into this time, Samuel?
Well, we're going to talk relationship stuff. It's kind of a sexy time with Sam, except we're going to talk about a concept that we brought up last time with the data on uh, women that make more than their husbands are way more likely to divorce their husbands. And we're in that situation because we have high performing wives, but we've managed to hang on. So we're going to talk about that.
Hmm.
And then if we have any extra time, we might talk some fitness stuff and riff on that. I do want to bring up that you see this as a part two. And if you just skip to this one, we are doing part one and two because we do our Wheel of Time on Thursday, but we tend to talk about many multiple topics in on Tuesday. And instead of seeing just a 3 hour video that you're unsure if you want to wade into and try to parse out, we're going to have a main topic and then other topics as separate videos. And there might even be part three sometimes, depending on what we talk about and how unrelated they are. Uh, but we talked about the school shooter in the last one. It actually went a little long, so sorry about the length of a part one there for our first time doing this. But
And not nearly as long as I had prepped, because, yeah.
well, and I actually would have been a lot more brief, but I kind of lost my train of thought on that one.
Hmm.
So I wasn't happy with my performance, but we got it done. And maybe we'll revisit some of the topics that you had ready later some other time, especially as the
Speaking of
smoke
not being
clears even
happy,
more.
yeah. Speaking of not being happy with your performance, let's talk about marriage. Oh.
Oh,
Um,
well,
so I'm
considering where they're still going, I think the performance is good in the
uh
overall grand scheme of things.
and I'm curious what your thoughts on are, because when I was down there last time we were not catching any fish. Uh I had this idea when we were listening to Williamson and Ballou primarily, but there were some others we listened to that were on similar topics, and it actually dovetails in with something I was reading about last time or the time before with Mike Rowe interviewing Charles C.W. Cook and the fetishization of college. Uh, and here's where they're connected to me is that as they were talking about, as Rowe and Cook were talking about, there is this uh earned pedigree if you go to college. It doesn't matter what you studied, it doesn't matter how you did, you are automatically better than someone who didn't, because that is our marker. And so uh, as part of that, it is go to college, get a good job, establish your career. So, career, how much you make, what diplomas you have hanging on your wall, those are our markers for not only achievement, but uh, 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 achieved and potential success. And that's a problem when it comes to relationships, because when you get down to the nitty gritty of two people trying to live together, there's a hell of a lot more to it than that.
Oh yeah, and I think I want you to start with your story, and then I'll come in with mine because mine's obviously going to be the more
Mhm.
non-conventional of the two. And then I've kind of got a little bit on what probably is the formula for at least heading in the right direction.
So, my wife and I just a couple month and a half ago
By
celebrated
the
our.
way, everybody's like doing stuff around me. I've turned my gain down. That's why I'm leading in. But if you're hearing a whole lot, I can turn it down more.
I haven't heard anything except you. So,
Okay.
so far so good. All right, so wife and I just celebrated our 20th anniversary.
Whoop, whoop.
Um, so we have been married a long time, um, with two kids. We got married while we were both still in college, and to me, that is the key to how our relationship grew together. And this was kind of the spark while I was listening to Blue and Williamson, is because we were broke dumb college students together. And because we started having children early, what mattered was how our lives meshed together so that we supported each other. And it had nothing to do with career. It had nothing to do with earning. It was all about, the practical things of what classes do you need to take this semester? All right, I need to take these for sure. And these are the times they're available. Let's make sure our schedules complement each other. Let's make sure someone's always home with the kids. Uh, let's juggle and balance that. And then that just naturally flowed into, okay, now you're the one with the better degree and the better job offer, so I'm the one staying home. Especially when we moved uh, after college, her first job uh, was in the middle of the school year, and our son was not doing well in second grade. Um, his reading level had plummeted. And so I decided, well, since we're in the middle of the school year, I'm going to homeschool him for the rest of this school year and get him back up to where he needs to be. We're going to revisit first grade and we're going to do second grade and we're going to preschool our daughter at the same time so I can get them up to where they should be before we put them in school. So that needed to be done, and I was the one who was going to do it because that's just how it was. That she had the good job offer, I didn't, and okay, now let's balance this. And the point being, in much the same way that we were riffing last time when I brought up the Mike Rowe interview about um how the perception women have that they'll overlook, you know, this guy because he's a plumber. Well, yeah, except he owns his own business, so he's wealthier than you are. But that guy in the suit who's the HR consultant is got $200,000 in student loan debt and is going to be stuck in middle management for the rest of his life because our ideas of what mark those things have been warped, because it's no longer about who has the muscles and who brings home the most mammoths.
Well, except mammoths in this day and age, a lot of times is associated with money, but you just described a system of carrying the weight for your part of the family without having to bring home the money. Uh, in the olden days, when you needed the muscles, obviously you would have been taken priority because she wouldn't have had an option of a better job to get mammoth. And, there's no way she could have chucked a spear like you could. And now in this day and age, we're in a completely different environment. We have to adapt. And you adapted in a way that still allowed you to be a useful member of your small community that is your family. And
And so by the time my wife reached that point where she was making way more money than I am or almost certainly ever will, uh it didn't really matter. There's not going to be that, resentment there. As a man, I may feel kind of meh about it from time to time, but at least while we have kids in the house for sure, that's not our focus. Our focus is the overall health of the family because that comes first. And I think, and this is where I'm going to get old fashioned and crotchety, is I think that is a major problem, a major disservice we have done to our youth by telling them, no, no, don't get serious with someone until you're established in your career. No, you want to grow together.
I think that's going to be the one common thread with our two situations is we did the same thing in that regard. Neither one of us were established. So you actually develop the camaraderie that goes with surviving. And
You
usually
are
in
able,
relationships where that it breaks it up early because they can't handle the stress together.
that's a good point. That's a good point. Is you're going to, I mean, you're going to go through some of the more difficult times as a couple together and in a situation where it's going to be more difficult to just walk away because you need each other because if you're already established in your career, then is your partner a partner or just a roommate you have sex with?
The common rebuttal here would be the sunken cost fallacy. Are you just saying, well, because we've put in all of this, we need to just keep going forward? But the rebuttal to the rebuttal is no, there's also something to be said to the fact that we built this thing together, and it wouldn't be this thing if we didn't build it together, and it can actually be a bigger thing if we keep building together. That's different than sunken costs. Sunken cost means you have no future in this, but you're just holding on because of all the things you went through.
In the same way that, as an analogy, Dirk Nowitzki hung around a long time and he could have gone somewhere else. He could have retired, but by the end of his career, he was taking way less money than he probably could have gotten in free agency, but he was also playing less minutes. But he had helped build the franchise and take it to its only title and was beloved in the community. So as a member of that team, both the basketball team itself and then the greater fandom team, he didn't want to walk away. He wanted to finish his career here because something had happened through the struggles, the difficulties, and the successes that had made the franchise to him more meaningful than just dollars and cents, more meaningful than just X's and O's.
Okay, so the second part to your story would be you did this trials tribulations together, you built something, but now things have eased up because y'all are more successful. What keeps it going from your end?
Giggity. Oh, um, you know, that's my flippant, snarky answer, which when we were down there for New Year's to go out with her friend and their family for their New Year's dinner tradition doohickey, and her best friend's niece was there with her boyfriend, and they'd been together like 3 years or something. And so I was sitting across from him, and we were chatting, and so he asked me something similar when it came up that we were about to celebrate our 20th anniversary. Is, you know, what's the secret? And of course, I flippantly said, the canned joke answer of she's always right. And then I thought about it for half a second and said, but seriously, the answer I came up with was complementarianism. That we aren't we aren't competing with each other, we're competing together against life, which is a rough game. So
That's actually why I wore this shirt today.
nice. So if you are complementary, you're going to be able to grow together. Um, in the simple things of um I really suck at keeping a schedule if I don't have it right in front of me and I'm looking at it all the time. So she makes sure that, you know, especially when the kids were younger and they were in all these different activities, and so you got to juggle and balance. So she made sure I knew, okay, he needs to be here at this time for this thing. Okay. And I knew I was the one that was going to take him. And I was the one that was going to be, part of that, especially if it was sports related. Um, so we just naturally filled those roles together. And I think a big part of that came from, okay, um, we've got this infant, we're still in school. How do we make this work? So you have to complement each other in a situation like that.
Well, so this is a chicken or egg thing. Did y'all learn to do that during that situation, or did y'all make it through that time period because y'all were that way?
So I'd actually got to thinking about that after my conversation with this young man about relationships, is that that's the flaw in the truth that opposites attract. So you can't be completely opposite. You're just going to repel each other at some point, okay? But you do need some opposites in that, you know, I'm a little more chaotic, you're a little more lawful, whatever. So we're not too ordered, but we're not just all over the place either, right? You need some of those differences. Um, but you do have to have similarities. And one of the things that I also think is a disservice to youth when we talk about relationship is finding what you have in common, except what people look for in common is all surface level crap. Something we didn't really realize until we looked back on it with a little more maturity is that even though we think differently, and we're different in personality, we have the same basic core values of the things that are very important. You know, if you were doing a little survey and it's very important, somewhat important, meh, dislike, somewhat dislike, those core things that, you know, that you wouldn't compromise on. If you both agree on that, then you will be set up for success. So that if you're together on the big issues and you agree what the big issues are, then when it comes to that complementarianism, that learning to live together, it's going to make it easier to naturally fit into those roles. So for instance, um, we both talked about, or very early on when we were dating, we talked about, you know, big things that would, you know, freak other people out of, you can't talk about family that early on or what you want with family that, no, if that's something that's important to you, by golly, you should bring it up early,
Dr.
you know?
David Lane actually suggests to a lot of people to do it very early, like first or second date type stuff. I'm like, whoa. He's like,
You
you
know,
can.
in the same way that the opposite end of the spectrum is Quagmire going down the line at the bar, just, hey, you wanna, you know, get lost. Hey, you wanna
the,
pre-op or
the
post-op?
the Andrew Tate approach, right?
Yeah. So on the other end of the spectrum, if that's all you care about, then throw it out there and then move on or get what you want. Well,
Well, there is a
if
little bit of people look down on that, but there's a little bit of honesty to that
mhm,
because you're not being pretentious. You're not pretending to relationship somebody up just to get laid, just to not be there when they wake up in the morning.
right. And so much more so if you actually do want a serious relationship because this is important. So have important discussions early on. And that's not to say, you know, if you can't see us together a year from now, we shouldn't have a second date. But you know, find a balance there. It's it is ideally, would you like this? Are you looking for something long term? It doesn't mean yes, it's love at first sight. That's crap. No, it the concept is there. That's more important than the surface level commonalities. You know, that where those things in common can work is if the root of why you like those things are similar. So that's where, oh, you have to have things in common. Well, no, you have to have priorities in common. You have to have core personality things in common. They can manifest completely differently, but that core has to be similar.
Well, there has to be some surface level things in common. I mean, otherwise you're just gonna spend your life hanging out with your friends and then coming home and have a briefing about your future
Yeah.
with your
No,
partner.
that's true. That's true. But you know, some of that, I mean, for crying out loud, I've mentioned before that I watched a Korean dating show with my wife because yeah, this is, she said this isn't the kind of show you will watch, but the stuff that's going on here is the kind of thing that will spark your mind and make you think and talk. You'll like that aspect of it. In the same way that then we watched Physical 100 and, you know, buff shirtless guys slamming each other around fighting over a medicine ball is not anything she's interested in, but the the
And
fact that
girls, they had sports bras,
yes,
but they were
yeah,
there.
but the fact that they then got up, hugged, high-fived, and were buddies after they just get down beating the snot out of each other, that was interesting to her.
All right. Any final thoughts before we switch gears?
Did you have any more on it, or were you just more
Well,
curious to see where I was coming from here?
I wanted to see where you were coming from, and then I was going to give my kind of background on our situation,
And
and
I didn't know if
then
you had more numbers because you like the numbers.
oh well, I mean we can go into numbers later, but so ours was kind of there were similarities, but it's one of those same but different. You know, I also got married in college, but that didn't last. I mean, it lasted 5 years. That's more than most businesses last. But we made it 5 years, and my current spouse also had a starter spouse, so we both had starter spouses, and we're pretty much the same age. But we met later. We were in our late 20s. 20. Well, I met her when I was 25, but we started dating when we were 27. Uh, but I was already out of school again and working, and I had just gotten a pretty good job that didn't need a degree. She was in school, and we just kind of started talking. And there was, I think for my selection process, intelligence is really big. Obviously, attraction is there. So those two things were obviously taken care of. She did have kind of a maternal aspect to her, so I was attracted to her. And I think because of the hard work and the drive forward that she could see, plus the intelligence she knew from where I knew before when I was in school, I was in class with her sister and we were doing study groups and things like that. Obviously, her sister being also intelligent, we were leading the study groups. So all of these things that attracted her, even though I wasn't the college educated guy, I didn't have a degree or anything. We got together and I was actually making pretty good money at USAA. And so I was, as we moved in together, I was supporting things. And then she got in med school in a different city. So decision time. Do we try a long distance relationship? I keep my good job. She goes to med school and we see how it works out. Or do I follow her there? And she said, well, this is your chance to go back to school. Big decision because I was doing pretty well for myself. I was planning on going back to school so you can get past that glass ceiling of you need a degree to go
Mhm.
further in the company, but I was still on my way up to that. And ultimately, we know what decision I made. I followed her to here, and boy, howdy, did it get rough because I could not find a similar job to what I had. And now we were both in school. We had we were already buying a house in San Antonio before she got accepted into med school, and we just switched that mortgage to one here. And so we had a mortgage. We were both in school. There were not many job options for me, and she was in med school, so she couldn't have a job. And I got a job as a personal trainer. That didn't quite work out. Then I got the job at Velocity later, and that's where my career path started. So that obviously worked out, but it didn't pay well. So I was working a shit ton of hours and going to school. She was going to school a shit ton of hours because it's med school. And oh, year two, she gets knocked up. So now we're getting a little bit more similar situation to what you were in. So that we of course we had a child, and so I had to even work more. But then she had to redo her second year, and so when Ben was September, he was not quite a year old yet. She had to do a full semester in Dallas.
Oof.
So life became even more interesting because she's without her child. She's having to do this thing in Dallas, which is taking up all her time. She's stressed out. I'm here with the child, working full time, going to school full time. So every day looked like 3:30 in the morning wake up, put Ben in his little papoose, take him to work, do the first couple boot camps, take him to daycare, go back to work, work the rest of the morning into the afternoon, go to school all afternoon, go back to work, pick him up, go back to work, then back to school, then get home at 11 and do it all again the next day. And every other weekend, her sister would take Ben up to Dallas, and then every other I would take Ben up to Dallas. So we all saw each other. And every time her sister was going to take him, I would be like, okay, I'm gonna have a night out. I'm gonna have. When that weekend came around, all I did was sleep because that's all I could do because it was so exhausted. So that was 6 months. And then she gets back. We struggle through med school. We struggle through residency. I the gym I was working at was sold and I lost my job. So I opened a gym. And then we're going through that all the way up until just a couple of years ago. So that's why I had no clue about politics or anything like that for a while, because it was head down, ramming through a wall just to get through life. One bill at a time, one setback at a time. And that really, really, really sucked. Then when we came out of it on the other end, you would think, oh, awesome. Things are good now, except the better things got, the harder it was for our relationship. Because it's kind of hard to change. it and then we went through a spot where we kind of pulled away from each other, and I was just working all the time, and then when I wasn't working, I'd spend time with friends, and then I'd come home, do my dad duty, go to bed, do it all again. And then we got into it a little bit, and after a couple of years of that, she finally it kind of came to a head. And one of the things was, she was like, you're only with me because I make a lot of money. This is probably where these discussions go, where these things end. And at first, I mean, who wouldn't get kind of offended right there after the first half of that story? But for some reason, I was able to kind of keep my cool, sort of. I stormed out. I didn't say anything though. And I went back to work and sat on it for a little bit. And she had written out a thing, and that was part of it. And then it actually got me thinking, and I filled out everything she had written out. And there was a lot of them, a lot of the things, and I guess she had been going to therapy and I didn't even know. And this is an exercise she was supposed to do. And there were a lot of lines on there where I was like, wow, you're actually right. I suck. Wow, you're actually right. I suck. But then I got back down to that other one, you're only with me for the money. And I was like, this one, I'm going to take a stand, because hell no. You didn't have this money when we got together. You didn't have this money when we got married. You didn't have this money when we had a kid. You didn't have this money for the next 8 years of that. We only just now got that. Don't let it go to your head. And that was apparently the right answer because everything kind of settled down and we were able to talk about things. Because then I could say, well, there's this thing that I'm not satisfied with anymore. Why have we pulled away from each other? We don't even sleep in the same bed anymore. Da, 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 da. And that opened up the discussion route. And neither of us are the greatest communicators. We tend to sit on things until it comes to a head. And that's what happened here. It was easy when there was no time to talk about it. When it was just go, 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 try to stay afloat. Well, you're still swimming over there? Okay, I'm still swimming too. Let's just keep going. But then when things settled down, you needed to say something. And we're still not great about that, but we're better at it. And
Yeah. You know what? It's an important part of the story there because it's not to say that, oh, if you get married young and have to figure out life together, you're going to grow together and so you'll be have this great strong. That's not to say it's going to be easy. The point is that if you have those core values and if you have had those experiences together, then when things become really difficult, you have a foundation. So you're, you know, it's like you said, you're not just treading water anymore. You've been through that. You went through that and you came out on the other side stronger. So now when you have a real relationship crisis, it it's not just, you know, well, kind of feel like we're just, roommates here, so we might as well just go our separate ways. No, because you have all that history together. So there's
yeah,
something there.
and so there's two kind of parts of it. It gave us an opportunity to say this is something about me that apparently you didn't know because you're not expressing anything in relation to it. It's like, oh, I actually didn't know that because we've been in head first in the cold water for so long that we didn't get to know that part of each other. And when you're dating, you don't get to know those things sometimes because everything's fun and everything's nice. To your point of maybe have these discussions earlier. Uh, but yeah, hardship helps keep people together a lot of the time. And Harrington talks about this as well because you do see when we're talking the numbers, the divorce rate is so much higher in middle class or upper middle class environments than it is in really working class households because it is a partnership. It is a like I said, the battle buddy, because I told you I love the word partner. When it as long as it's a partnership and everybody's doing their role, everybody's actually tends to be happy, especially if you're winning. Just like it being on a team, when you're winning, everything's good. It doesn't matter the quirk that other teammate has. And the other thing is, it allowed us to sit and discuss solutions because we do mismatch in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Okay, well, this thing that I'm not getting, well, what is there a way to get it without making you suffer too?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so we do have a money differential, but where's the cutoff where you think I'm going to be a drain on the family? Okay, well, yeah, I can easily do that, you know, especially if I were to work a little harder. Okay, so I take care of these bills, you take care of these bills, and the rest is fun money on either side. And if you want to spend that on me, fine. If I want to spend that on you, good, awesome. You know, and obviously she has more capability to do that, but it's all by choice. There's no you need to cover my ass that goes into
Hmm.
it.
Hmm. Because the need came early on things that were non-negotiable to either of you, which was family, which was supporting each other through rough time, and the big one being a child together is all right, you know, that was important to both of you. And so we've got to figure out how to make this work because now we have this other being here, this other life that we are wholly responsible for and is very important to us. So that's our priority.
Well, and I already know just from even when we were dating, because we dated long enough to have fights before we got married. This is one mistake a lot of couples do. They don't ever have that first fight before they're committed. Uh, but there were some that got pretty heated, and it gave me an opportunity to put forward a quality trait that I have is I don't give up right away on anything. Well, hell, we're on what, episode 165?
Mhm.
90% of podcasters give up after 3. Of the 10% that remain, 90% don't make it past 21. We're in the top 1%. Now, granted, it's not miserable for me or anything like that, but there is that part where it's like, well, we've only got 56 subscribers. What's the point? But
Mhm.
perseverance is one of my greatest qualities. Dependability is one of my greatest qualities. And she got to see that while we were dating. So when things got hard, it probably wasn't a surprise that I kept pushing forward. I think the surprise was when things got easier, I kept pushing like I did when they were hard, to the neglect of actually being personable.
I'm gonna go back to something I brought up in part one, which is this poll from the Wall Street Journal. And again, this is 1998, 2019, and 2023 is when they took this poll and asked how people rank these values. And here is kind of everything we've been ranting about is why this poll is so frightening to me, because the money is that surface level thing. It's the result. It's kind of what we've been ranting about is no, the the money is an indicator that you have done something, that you have accomplished something, that that you have put in work, and now you have this result you can show in the same way that, you know, you build a birdhouse, okay? The birdhouse is the result of work. And in the past, money was lower because that was simply a thing, the thing that you needed to do these other things that were more important to you.
Well,
It
and it's
was,
it's like those happiness studies, right? And there are parts of them that kind of make you cringe a little bit. But the one about money, where more money doesn't make you happier, there is a point where it does. And it's enough money. Having more money makes you happier up until you get to the point where all your needs are taken care of. Then beyond that, it doesn't make you any happier. And people leave that first part out, because not having money can be pretty damn miserable too.
mhm,
But finally, everything coming to head and allowing us to talk to each other allowed me to make the statement that I knew to be true. These things that I'm lacking right now, I would give up all the money we have and work day and night in a break back job if I had those things instead. I would give up all the money for that,
mhm.
you know. And that is actually the true statement. So,
And you had in the
and I had,
past,
yeah.
basically, yeah.
I gave it up to get here, right?
Mhm.
I was doing pretty damn well for myself at USAA. I was moving up as fast as somebody could.
Yeah, as a early mid-20s bachelor, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to shift or do you want to
I wanted to do
want to leave it there?
a little bit into the complementary roles to kind of
Hmm.
have some background information. I don't know, have you ever heard of these? I think people put a
Yes.
little too much weight into them
Hmm.
sometimes, but I think when people put a little too much weight into them when they think that, oh, they know the answer because they know their languages. There's wiggle room. That's the key
Hmm.
to the fact that it's not the end all be all. But if you know these things, it'll help you find the right partner, because as long as you're within reaching distance of satisfying the needs of your partner and them satisfying yours, I think that's what makes you have the chance. Like, I can tell you, my wife's is acts of service and words of affirmation. So acts of service, it's not just doing those things for them; it's doing them without them having to ask you, just because you know they like them,
Yes.
right?
That so one of the ones that jumps out at me from these is gifts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The point isn't the thing. Once again, the point is, when you're a dorky high school student back in our day, you make a mixtape. Okay. That cost you nothing except like the 50 cents for a blank cassette. What matters is that you were paying attention and you knew these are her favorite songs. and you put
Well,
them all on a tape together. The fact that you paid attention and knew, oh, these she really likes this music, so I will give that a gift. It's not the thing that actually matters.
and it's so think of gifts and think of something as simple as a card, right? You, uh, you can show up to somebody's house for an occasion and you can hand them a couple bucks, or you can give them a card worth those couple bucks. But the card shows you thought about them, you picked something you thought they would like, and you probably took a pen out and used regular handwriting for the first time in your life in a long time and wrote something nice in it for them that
Mhm,
came from your perception of them to you. It's all of those things that go into it versus the $3 value of the card. You could show up with someone's favorite wine, or you can hand them the value of that wine in dollars, and it doesn't mean the
mhm,
same thing. So
mhm,
it's the meaning behind the gift. Everybody talks about, oh, Valentine's is a commercial holiday. All you're doing is paying too much for roses. It's the meaning behind the roses.
mhm,
We can get into the hardwired women that think, talk about gifts as a sign of generosity and resource management for men. That's the underlying roots, but stay on the surface here where you're showing intention and meaning and thought and even some intuition if you pick up something that wasn't overt on the
mhm,
outside when you're giving the gifts. And that means a lot to some people. It means a little bit to a lot to most people, but it means a lot to some people.
mhm.
But words of affirmation, this is one I do struggle with a little bit, I will admit, because how was dinner? Good. I should have been like, good. And I really liked the da, 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 that kind of. But this is one I struggle with because I've had those friends where good was never good enough, great was never good enough because I'm thinking of one situation in particular. Hey, he brought over homemade sausage and he said, "Isn't that the?" He said, "How was it?" I said, "Oh, it was really, really good. I really liked it. I even went in further, just juicy, da 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 da." And then they came back with, "Wasn't it the best you've ever had?" Oh, now I dig my heels in because you've just put me in a corner. And if anybody hasn't noticed from the last 164 episodes, the whole reason I do stuff like this is because as soon as you put me in a corner, I kind of go a little wiggy. So then I'm like, no, no, because now you put me in a corner where I have to make a decision on what's the best ever without any others to compare it with in front of me and without
Yeah,
context. Is it kielbasa? Is it, Polish? Is it German? Is it
you can't compare it to my sausage because Hamilton ate it. I'm so
uh,
sad about that. So much sausage.
so I do struggle with that one because sometimes I'll say what I think and they'll want more, and then I start digging my heels in all
Yeah.
the time. And I do that with my wife, so I do have to get better at that one. But I know for myself, it's physical touch, and I am also acts of service. But for me, I'm more specialized. Physical touch is way far above everything else, and then it
Hmm.
kind of levels out. Gifts are cool with me. Acts of service. We're both actually kind of low in quality time, so because we're both kind of introverted even with each other, so
Hmm.
that works for us because we're also both busy people, so that the busyness doesn't get in the way of our relationship. So again, this is the compliment. We're both low in something that our lifestyle doesn't let us have anyways very much. So when we do have it, even though we're low in it, it's still special. And
Yeah.
for me, I'm good with acts of service. I'm great at kind of picking out what somebody wants me to do, and I love doing shit around the house. I don't even need a honeydew list. I just do shit. So,
It helps that you have a very get her done kind of mentality in the first place.
well, and also that personality that's very aware of your surroundings, of a very broad vision type personality. So you kind of see all the things that need to get done as well, except for cleaning my office. My office is a mess, but that's just my personality, and it's my office, so I don't have to worry about somebody else depending on it.
Well, hopefully we have given some people some food for thought here, of and not just the kind of ranting about things generally, but and that's why I wanted to use ourselves as anecdotes, because you've got some specific examples here, some specific things, and we can talk about how we handled these situations. So it's more than just platitudes, because you can see, yeah, okay, at least in these couple instances, this worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of these days, maybe we'll be the oldest ones dancing on the floor at a wedding, and they always ask for the advice, and the guy gives exactly the same campy response you gave earlier, just to make
Mhm.
everybody laugh. But no, it would be like, no, learn to speak your mind when it's appropriate. Learn to let other people know what your needs are, especially your spouse, and then learn how to work those out. I mean, compromise is maybe not the right word, because it's not always meeting in the middle, but sometimes you can find workarounds, or you can find, okay, well, you do this thing your way, and then when there's something important to them, you're ready to say, well, you can do that thing your way.
Mhm. Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm very hangry, so I think, and I had a thought for, you'd mentioned we might talk some fitness, but I actually want to hold off. Did you get your squat video finished for the Real Fitness channel?
It's been up for a while.
Okay. I'm gonna watch that, and then next Tuesday, um, we'll talk about that, because I want to see what you had to say in that video, because I was coaching someone earlier today on squat form, and so it gave me some thoughts. So I want to see, we can tie it into that video and point people over to the Real Fitness channel, and we'll talk some squats fitness wise next Tuesday.
Okay, well, just standard disclaimers. We are not relationship therapists. We are not couples therapists. We are just two guys who have a couple years under our belt. I have total of 20, but five were in another relationship. So 15 with
Preseason records don't count.
15 with the current one. Yeah, season records don't count. 15 with but I did learn a lot from it though. So I mean, there were the early days when we were kind of discussing being together, where I knew exactly what I didn't want, and part of it is that quality time thing, but also, in a different way. It was, my ex-wife was an accountant, but she also kind of micromanaged the relationship a little bit, and I knew that was no go for me. If someone starts micromanaging me, I'm out. But but so it does count to some degree. We'll give it a honorable mention.
Mhm.
But what the one thing we both haven't come across yet, so we made it past the 3-year itch and the 7-year glitch, but we haven't made it to empty nest yet. So we will
I'm
cross
getting
that.
close.
Yeah, you're getting close. You're getting close. I've
Mhm.
got a little bit longer. What do I've got? 5 years if he actually leaves the house when a kid is supposed to. He's a
Yeah.
little bit of a mama's boy, so I probably got longer than 5 years. But
All right. Well, we'll see y'all Thursday for some Wheel of Time action.
all right, awesome.